In school, I never liked reading. From being in class in elementary school and having to go to the library with your class to pick out a book, and to me, it was just I hated it. I envied those kids that could go and open a book and read for hours and just lose track of time. I could never do that. And I feel like part of it was because, I don't know, maybe I had like ADD or something and I couldn't focus on something for more than like 2 minutes. Anyway, fast forward to middle school. In middle school, it was basically more or less, the same thing. And I really wasn't interested in reading at all. The only thing I was interested in was this right here. This, for me, and for a lot of my friends, if you could see that, was it took up, more time than we'd like to think. From being on the mic, being on Xbox, and just talking all types of trash to people online and everything. For me, it was going on YouTube to watch stuff about Modern Warfare 2, watch Modern Warfare 2 videos, and then playing Modern Warfare 2, and then going to school the next day to talk about Modern Warfare 2. Modern Warfare 2, like I said, took up a lot of our time in grades, 7 and 8. But it was fun times all around, and I have no regrets about it at all. But in high school, it was basically the same thing again. When I went to school, we were forced to read these books like Shakespeare and Macbeth and all these other stupid books. Isn't Shakespeare the author? Okay, so I'm seeing that it's a book. Okay, so apparently Macbeth is a book, but then apparently like it was a play before or something like that. So that right there should tell you how much that I know about Macbeth and reading and Shakespeare and all those types of things when I was in school. So I vividly remember myself telling myself, I have the memory of me telling myself that I wanted to start reading in 2018. So I bought Gary's book, Crushing It, which is actually in my bag right now. I should have brought it, so lack of preparation. But anyway, regardless, so I bought Gary's book, Crushing It, which is the yellow one. I bought that book because I was consuming a bunch of his content at that time, and I was just like, all right, I guess it's a good place to start. So I started reading it, and I was bored, and I didn't know what to do because I was, a bunch of thoughts just came rushing into my head, and I said, you know what, maybe reading is just not for me. So I put the book down after getting to like page, 50, 57 or something like that. And I didn't touch it for over a year. And after me putting the book down, I went back to blowing out my eardrums, listening to music, going to and from work. And, one day I thought to myself, like, there has to be something else that I can do other than just listening to the same music going to and from work while doing the same thing, every day. Like, I knew that there was something I could change, and I just didn't know what it was at the time. So I read this quote, and it said something along the lines of like, the first step is the hardest to take. Like, it showed a staircase, right? And then like the first step was like this big, and then the next step was like that big. So it's like you need a lot of courage and like strength or whatever you want to call it to be able to take the first step. But then after you take this step, it's so easy to take this one because it's such a small step, and then it starts coming easier. So after I read that, I went and I bought this book right here, which is the first book that I read from Gary, and it's his first book just in general. And looking back on it, I realized that it was kind of stupid because it's like I went and bought another book before finishing the book that I started, and I didn't even get halfway, and I went and I bought another book. But anyway, it doesn't matter. The thing with me though is that that book had appeal to me because it was a smaller book, so it kind of seemed less, daunting, if you want to call it that. It wouldn't be smart for, in my opinion, it wouldn't be smart for somebody to jump into like Jordan Peterson. That's 400 and something pages. So I wanted to start with something small that I could finish within, a week, 2 weeks or whatever, and then we would see, what would happen. So I pick up Gary's book and I forced myself to read that book, and I was done in like a week, and it captivated me like no other book I had read before. And then I figured it out. It wasn't that I wasn't interested in reading, it was that I wasn't interested in what I was reading. I wasn't interested in the content. I wasn't interested in the topic. I wasn't interested in the authors. I didn't care about Shakespeare and whoever, whatever other books that school forced you to read. After reading that book, I realized that I cared about Gary Vee. I cared about Elon. I cared about Jordan Peterson. I cared about business and I cared about marketing, and I scratched my own itch. I didn't rely on school, to bring out my interests and do it for me. I did it myself. Now, almost 4 months into 2020, and I'm done 4 books, or I'm about to finish 4 books. And my goal this year, by the end of this year, by the end of December of 2020, I want to be able to say that I read 12 books. Now, I'm not saying that school is stupid and you should drop out and all this and all that, because, to be honest, school is still important, because without school, you wouldn't know how to read. Without school, you wouldn't know how to write. But I'm saying, don't rely on school to bring out your passion, because it's not going to do that. It's just, school is just like a cookie cutter thing to, it's like a conveyor belt, right? You bring in some students, they go through the system, and they get spat out at the end of it, and then, you go and figure it out on your own. See, here's the thing. Kids in elementary school don't know what their passions are. All they want to do is play, and rightfully so, because they're kids, and that's what kids should do. Although I don't know if kids are playing now with this whole, thing going on, but, regardless, when I was in elementary school, all I cared about was Pokemon and playing soccer. When I went to middle school, all we cared about was Xbox and Modern Warfare 2 and GTA 4. Then you get to high school, and what happens? Your whole class is forced to read Macbeth, or there was another one, I forgot what it was called, it was Shawshank Redemption or something, but I don't remember if that was a book or a movie. I know it's a movie, but I don't know if you were forced to read the book in school, but it was stupid because I wasn't interested in it. The only one I vividly remember is Macbeth, but it's I wasn't interested in it. But at the same time, it's I felt now I feel sorry for the kids that are in the back of the class, doodling in their notebook, or sketching out some idea, or they're thinking about something in their head, because I was that kid. I was the kid that was why do we have to read this? This doesn't interest me. 4 months ago, my whole life changed after I started reading books. I started uploading book reviews. We currently have 3 book reviews uploaded so far. If you want to watch them, they're linked, I think, on this side. It's one of the sides. I'll link the playlist up here somewhere. And one of my friends who reads, he actually got in contact with me. We started texting, back and forth, and now he gave me book recommendations to add to my very long list of book recommendations. Let me see how many I have right now. So right now I have 41 books in my book list, or books that I want to read, and now it's books have taken over my life. Now on the commute, when I'm going to work, I read. On when I'm eating my lunch, on lunch break, I read. When I'm coming home from work, I read. So it's I found something to do. I found something that takes up my time in a better way, if that makes sense. Instead of me just blasting out, my eardrums every day, for a week, the whole time, either I'm gonna there's 2 things that would happen. I'm gonna lose my hearing, and I'm not really gonna get anything out of it, right? But with books, it's, to me, it's sort of it calms me down, right? And there's been times when on the bus, I hope that more people get on the bus, so the bus driver has to make more stops in order to prolong the journey for me to have more time to read. That's how much I love reading now. I've seen people leave reviews on books, and they say that, the content from that book gave them more information than a whole semester at school. You know, before this year, like I could have counted the amount of books that I read like up to this point on probably both my hands, because that was just how much that like I hated reading. But that was because I wasn't scratching my itch, right? I wasn't reading books that I was interested in. I was reading books that were being forced down my, well, really and truly, I wasn't even reading the books. You know, when they gave us Macbeth or, you know, whatever it was, like I didn't even read the book. I'm pretty sure I copied off some kid when you had to like do like assignments on the book. And stuff like that. I was reading what was being fed to me by a school system that had simply, you know, failed countless kids. Now, before you say, oh, well, you know, I'm not interested in business or I'm not interested in marketing or, you know, anything like that. I'm not saying that you only have to read business books or marketing books like how I am. I'm saying I want you to read what you're interested in. You know, if Elon and Tesla is what you're interested in, you know, read that. If Gary is what you're interested in, read that. If Jordan Peterson is what you're interested in, you know, read that. But like if you want to read recipe books, then read that. If you want to read the dictionary to expand your vocabulary, then read that. You know, I want you to read whatever you want. I want you to scratch your own itch. Read what you're passionate about. If you're passionate about cameras and filmmaking, if you're passionate about lighting, if you're passionate about paint, read something that scratches your itch and something that you're passionate about. Because who knows, maybe one day it could turn into your job, and then next thing you know, you're doing something that you love. Because at the end of the day, school will only take you so far. And as always, thanks for watching.